Hi, welcome to the Shiko Math Practice Lab Algebra 2 lecture series. And in today's video, we're going to start lesson 2.6. We're going to talk about one of the most critical part of the linear equations. It's the slope of the linear equations. And our previous video, we briefly discussed the rate of the change. So the slope is the rate of the change, see here, okay? So before we do the worksheets, before we take a look at the worksheets, let's go to the whiteboard and let's have a very brief lesson about the slope and what, the meaning of the slope and what is the different situations of the slope here, right? So let's go to the whiteboard here. Okay, so let's start here. Okay, so we know, the 2 points, right? So for the linear equation, basically it's a line, correct? Right, so here, so if this is my coordinates plane, see here, right? So if this is my coordinates plane here, okay? So we know, the ending 2 points. So if I have a points here, I have a points here, right? So we know ending 2 point will determine a line here. So like this 2 point, okay, so we'll determine this lines here, correct? All right. And if you give me any other 2 points here, so if I have a points here, I have a points here, right? Then this 2 point will determine another lines here, right? So that's what we said 2 points will determine the lines here, okay? So the slope is the rate of the changes here, right? So typical, the way we defined the slope, we use the m. So if you have 2 points, if this point is x1, y1, and this point is x2, y2 here. So the slope we defined as how much change of the y related to the change of the x's here. So we say the slope is x2 minus x1 and the y2 minus y1 here. And some people, they call this rise over run, right? Why we call this rise over runs here, right? So if you take a look, right, this is x1, and here, this is x2 here, right? Then in here, this is y1, okay? So this is y1, and this is y2 here, right? So the rise, so you rise from the y1 to y2. So the y2 minus y1, that's the rise, right? You rise from y1 to y2. Wrong, what is wrong here? Wrong, that means from here, from the x1 to what? You run to the what? X2 here. So it's this distance. So it's x2 minus x1. So when you run from the x1 to x2 here, how much the rise, right? Or how much the y rises here. Or you say you can run from x2 to x1. So how much the y rises here. So this is, we call it rise over run. So basically, this is the rate of the changes, right? So this is the rate of the changes here. And so that means for the way we interpret that means for every change, every unit change of x, then how much the y changes here. Okay, that's what is the slope mean. And in here, right, so we have y2 minus y1, x2 minus x1. Really, it does not matter. As long as you are consistent. What I mean here, so you can write as x1 minus x2. Now, if this is x1 minus x2, then your top has to be y1 minus y2. So it doesn't matter which one you call it x1, x2, or y1, y2, as long as you're consistent. Okay, so we have several different situations about the slopes here. Okay, so okay, so first one's here, the slope, right? Situation number one. So if the slope is positive, so when the slope is positive, that means when x increase and y will increase here, right? So let's see here, make this one is kind of crooked, right? Okay, so let's take a look here. So, okay, so if the slope is positive, that means I have lines here. Okay, I have line is go this way. Okay, so I have lines that go this way. That means when x increase, y increase. I typically like to use the example. We say, hey, I'm going uphill. So like if you are standing here, right, you are climbing the mountains here, you go up here. So that's what we say, I have a positive slope, all right? So if you have a slope, it's negative. Okay, so if you have a slope, it's negative here. That means in here, let's take a look here. Okay, so then that means in here, okay. That means your line is go downward. So I typically like to use the notation. See here, they are just standing here, right? And then you're going to downhill for the hills here. So that's why the slope is negative. That means the line is going down. Slope is positive. Line is going up. Okay, how about when the slope is equal to 0 here, right? Okay, so when the slope is equal to 0, that means, oops, here, let me get a better graph here. So when the slope is equal to 0, that means my line is going to look somewhere like this. So this is what is my lines here. So that means this line is parallel to the x-axis. So it's a flat ground here, right? So that means I typically will you say, hey, you are walking in this flat ground. So this is, that means you're not climbing the mountain, you're not go downhill. So you are walking on the flat ground. So that means you have a slope equal to 0 here. Then the slope also can be undefined. Okay, so what is the undefined slope here? So let's take a look here. Okay, so the undefined slope, right? So it will be a slope, something like, let me find the different colors here. Okay, so that means your slope going to be something like, your line going to be like this. Okay, that means, so this is the line with undefined slope. And typical, I like to use the example, you know, when you go out the door, so you are standing here, you hit a cliff here. You cannot climbing up or climbing down, you hit a cliff here, right? So this is what we said, the slope is undefined. So those are the 4 different slopes. So if you do your calculation, if you get a slope is positive, then you know your line is going up. If you get a slope is negative, you know your line is going down. If you get a 0, then that means you're walking on the flat ground. Then you will get a slope is undefined. So you might ask, what is undefined means here? That means when you do the calculations here, you will have a 0 on the bottoms here, right? So that means x1 equal to x2 here. So if you do the slope calculation, if you get 0 on the denominator, so I know the fraction, I cannot have a 0 on the denominator. That is where you say the slope is undefined. All right. Okay, so now let's go to take a look at our worksheets and let's start to do some practice here. And let's see here if I can find my, okay, I find my worksheets. That's good. All right. Okay, so let's go to get my pencils here. Okay, so now like in here, this is what in this worksheet, the first things they give you say, hey, for the points, this is how do we define the slopes, right? So it's a changing y over changing x. So it's x2 minus x1 and the y2 minus y1. And also they say here, they say the x1 is not x2, not equal to x2. The reason why, because if x1 equal to the x2, what happens here? I'm going to get a 0 on the denominator, which is undefined. So the slope is not exist here. Okay. Okay. So now let's take a look. Let me give some space here so we can do the calculations here. Okay. So now let's take a look at the first ones here. The 3, -a, -5, -2, and +2. Like I say, you know, you can do, so let's say here, this is x1, y1, right? And this is x2, y2, right? So the first ones here, like if you have a coordinates, right? So the first coordinate is 1, x, and the second coordinate is y here. Okay, so let's take a look at so the slope here, let's just plug into the formula. So it's x2 minus x1 here, right? So what is x2? So it's -5 minus 3. Then y2 minus y1, so it's 2 minus -8. So the definition of the slope is quite easy. The place they're going to get you is, you know, the negative signs, right? So you need to be very careful about the negative sign. So -5 minus -3 is -8. So 2 and negative is positive, right? So it's 2. So what is here is 10. So you simplify it a little bit. So we'll give you -5 what? 5/4, right? So this is the slope for the first one, see here. Okay, so now let's take a look here, the second problem. So this is x1, y1, and the x2, y2s, right? Okay, so the same, the slope is x2 minus x1. Okay, so be careful about the negative. Like I said, the calculation most likely to kill you is those negative things here. So it's 3 minus -7, y2 minus y1. So it's -6 minus -6. Correct? Okay. So 3 minus minus become positive. So 3 plus 7. So this is 10. There's a minus minus become positive. So it's -6. So this is -6 plus 6. Oh boy, what I have here, I have 0 over 10. So it's 0. Oh, well, this is the one we discussed a while ago. So that means the slope equal to 0. What is your line looks like? It's a flat ground, right? So it's not rising, not going downhill, it's a flat ground here. Okay, let's take a look at number 3 here. So this is x1, this is y1, and this is x2, this is y2 here. Okay, so now I can do the same thing. The slopes here will be x2 minus x1, so it's 7 minus 4. Y2 minus y1, so it's -2 minus -3 here, right? So be careful about the negative signs here. So 7 minus 4 is what? It's 3, right? -2 minus 3. What is here is -5/3. Right? So that's the answer for here. Okay, so now let's take a look. This is x1. This is y1. This is x2. This is y2. Okay, so the slope is x2 minus x1. So it's -8 minus -6. y2, so it's 4 minus -3. Right? Be careful about the negative sign. If you get a negative sign correctly, I think you will have no trouble to find the value. So this is -8. Negative is what? It's a +6, right? So negative, so it's 4 plus 3. So what is the answers here is 7, -2, right? So it's a -3.5. Okay, that's it, right? So it's not bad, right? So it's pretty straightforward. Just be very careful about the negative signs here. Okay, so now the next thing here we're going to do is try to, so sometimes the problem will give you a graph and they will want you to find the slope, all right? So let me enlarge this graph so we can take a look here. Okay, the key things when we do this type of the problem, if the problem give you a graph, then how do you do it? Okay, so remember we need 2 points, right? So in the graph, so let's take a look here. So you want to capture the points. So like in here, you will say, hey, this is the point, right? So the red point is what? Is 0 to what? To the 3s, right? And then you look, you say, hey, this is a point, right? So the green point is what? 3, 0. So as long as you got 2 points, then I can find the slope. Then you can say this is x1, this is y1, then this is x2, this is y2 here, right? Then the slope will be x1, x2 minus x1, so it's 3 minus 0, y2 minus y1 is 0 minus 3, so it's a -3, and 3 is equal to -1, so the slope is -1. Well, match what we say here, so go downhill, right? So if you're standing here, you're going downhill. Okay, now let's take a look at this ones here. Let's try to choose the points here. Okay, so the first point you see here, you want to find the point, locate at the exact coordinate. So I will see this is the point. And this one's here is not really touched coordinate. So this one's here. So I will say this is my first point, my red one. So it's -3 and 4, right? So it's -3 and 4. So be very careful. Okay, now let's take a look at my green point. Remember, I want to find the one, get it exactly at the intersection of the coordinates. So this one is not exact, not exact. So what is, I think this is the point, is the exact point, right? So let's take a look. What is this point? So this point is -5. And here the y is what? Is -5. Correct? So like for this type of the problem, as long as you can find the points, right? Then you just use, so you will say this is x1, this is y1, and this is x2, this is y2 here. So what is the slopes here? Slope will be x2 minus x1, so it's -5 minus x1. then the y2 will be -5 minus 4, right? Okay, so -5 minus, right? So this is what? Minus minus, so this is -5 plus 3. So -5, so this is -9. So this is -9 to the -2. The negative cancel is 9/2. So it's 4.5. So the slope is 4.5. So it's a positive slope. As you can see, the line is go, like it's kind of climbing the hill, right? So it's go upwards here. Okay, that's it for these sections, for this lesson. How do we calculate the slope? So remember, if the problem gives you 2 points, right? So the formula is pretty easy. You just use the y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. That's what we call the rise over runs, right? And if they give you the graph, so you need to look at the graph very carefully to find the 2 points. And these 2 points have the exact coordinates. All right. Okay, so that's it. And we're going to, so we talk about this one very critical elements in the linear equation is the slope. Also remember, like in the beginning of the lecture, we said we have 4 kinds of the slope: positive, negative, zero, and undefined. All right. Okay, then you need to know for the positive slope, what the graph going to look like is you go upward, negative slope is go downhill, slope equal to 0, you are walking on the flat ground. If undefined slope, that means you bump into a cliff, right? So it's a straight lines there, you cannot walk. All right, that's it. And so it's nice to talk to you. And hope you like this video, and don't forget to subscribe it. If you have any questions, feel free to send me an email. And my email address is shikomathlab@gmail.com. It's located at the first page of the introduction slide. You can find it. Okay, so it's so nice to talk to you, and you have a good day. And I'm looking forward to talk to you our next lessons. Okay, bye.